The wedding bouquet hit the floor first. White roses and baby's breath scattering across polished cathedral stone like broken promises. Before we begin, thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy stories like this. I stood paralyzed in my gown, hand-sewn lace catching the stained glass light. $3,000. 3 months of double shifts at Mercy General Hospital. 200 witnesses and Preston Whitmore, the man I'd reshaped my entire life for, turned to address the crowd with that boarding school confidence I'd once mistaken for strength. "I can't go through with this," he announced, his voice echoing off vaulted ceilings with practiced clarity. "I won't marry someone so worthless. Someone who doesn't understand what it means to be a Whitmore." The words detonated in my chest. Worthless. I watched his mother, Victoria Whitmore, draped in Valentino and vindication, nod approvingly from the front pew, her thin smile a declaration of victory. My hands went numb against the bouquet stems I'd wrapped myself at 2 a.m. because professional arrangements cost too much. Gasps rippled through the pews. Phone screens lit up like fireflies. Someone's camera was already recording, capturing my destruction for whatever platform would consume it first. My cousin Jade made a strangled sound somewhere behind me, but I couldn't turn, couldn't move. The cathedral's incense mixed with rising bile, that sweet suffocating scent making my empty stomach revolt. I'd been too nervous to eat for 2 days. "Preston, please." My voice cracked, small and desperate, even to my own ears. "Evelyn, don't make this harder." He didn't even look at me when he said it. "You're a nurse. My family has standards. Did you honestly believe you belonged here?" The answer was yes. Stupidly, devastatingly yes, because he'd told me he loved me. Because he'd proposed in my cramped apartment, promising forever despite our different worlds. Because I'd believed him when he said none of it mattered. I should have known better when he insisted I quit my weekend volunteer clinic. When he suddenly needed to reschedule meeting my family for the 6th time. When his country club friends stopped making eye contact with me at fundraisers. When Victoria started calling me the help in Spanish, thinking I wouldn't understand. But I'd swallowed every warning sign, every red flag, every moment of calculated cruelty, because I thought love required endurance. That if I just tried hard enough, sacrificed enough, diminished myself enough, I'd finally be enough. Standing there in $3,000 of silk and shattered dreams, with 200 pairs of eyes dissecting my humiliation, I realized the truth. I was never the problem. And Preston Whitmore had just made the worst mistake of his life. What I didn't know, what I couldn't possibly know as I fled that cathedral with my dignity in ruins, was that 6 months later, I'd walk back into their world on the arm of Nicholas R. Scanlon. A man with neck tattoos and a reputation that made senators nervous. A man who saw strength where Preston saw weakness. A man who would teach me that power isn't inherited, it's claimed. And by then, I wouldn't be the broken woman who begged at the altar. I'd be the one they'd never dare touch again. Evelyn had stopped eating lunch 6 months before the wedding. Not dramatically. She wasn't trying to fit into a smaller dress size or chase some bridal magazine ideal. She simply couldn't afford both the cathedral venue deposit and groceries. So she chose the venue. Chose Preston. Chose the life she thought they were building together. "Protein bars are fine," she told herself, shoving another granola square into her scrubs pocket before her shift at Mercy General. "It's temporary." Everything was temporary. Every sacrifice just one more stepping stone toward forever. She picked up double shifts every weekend for 3 months straight. Friday nights through Sunday mornings, the slots no one wanted because they paid marginally better. While Preston attended charity galas and country club dinners, Evelyn was checking vitals, administering medications, holding the hands of dying patients whose families couldn't afford to miss work. The irony wasn't lost on her. "You look exhausted," her colleague Maya had said one morning, catching Evelyn staring blankly at a patient chart. "When's the last time you slept?" "I'll sleep after the wedding." Evelyn had forced a smile. "Just need to get through the next few months." But it wasn't just the physical exhaustion. It was the emotional accounting, the running tally of everything she gave up to make Preston's family accept her. The volunteer clinic she'd loved, where she treated uninsured patients every Saturday morning. "It doesn't look good," Preston had explained gently. "My mother thinks it's beneath you now. Beneath us." Her college friends, the ones who'd known her before Preston reshaped her into someone more palatable, slowly erased. "They don't really fit with our circle," he'd said over wine at a restaurant she couldn't afford. "You understand, right?" Her tiny studio apartment with the window boxes she'd planted herself, abandoned 6 months before the wedding. "Move in with me," Preston had insisted. Except with me meant into the Whitmore Estate guest house, where Victoria could monitor her coming and going like a suspicious landlord. And Victoria, God Victoria, the help uses the service entrance, dear. That was the first thing she'd said when Evelyn arrived with her suitcase and Hope. Said it with a smile sharp enough to draw blood. Evelyn had laughed. Nervous, uncertain. "Oh, I'm not. I know exactly what you are." Victoria's smile never wavered. "Let's not pretend otherwise." After that it was constant. Tiny corrections, subtle humiliations, calculated cruelty wrapped in concern. "You're wearing that." When Evelyn chose her own clothes for family dinners. How quaint. When she mentioned her parents' anniversary at their modest home. "Preston, darling, does she even know which fork to use?" Loud enough for Evelyn to hear from the next room. Each time, Preston would find her later, wounded, diminished, and promise it would get better. "She just needs time to adjust. You know how she is." So Evelyn adjusted instead. Bought etiquette books with money meant for textbooks. Watched YouTube videos on old money manners. Practiced small talk about vacation homes and boarding schools and charity boards, worlds she'd never belonged to and never would. She swallowed her accent, her background, her authentic self. She became smaller and quieter and more acceptable. And she told herself it was love. The truth lived in Victoria Whitmore's study, a room Evelyn was never supposed to enter. She discovered it 3 weeks before the wedding, looking for Preston in the main house. The door was cracked, voices drifting through expensive silence. "You'll do it at the altar." Victoria's voice, cold and clinical. Maximum impact. Maximum clarity. Evelyn froze in the hallway, her heart beginning to hammer. "Mother, I don't know if I can." Preston. Uncertain. "You can and you will." A crystal glass being set down with finality. "This family has survived 200 years of legacy because we make hard choices. That girl is not one of ours, Preston. She never will be. But I proposed. I told her." "You told her what lonely rich boys tell convenient distractions." Victoria's tone sharpened. "Did you think I wouldn't find out about the gambling? The 50,000 you lost at Monte Carlo. The investors your father's been quietly repaying." Silence. Heavy and damning. "You need rehabilitation, darling. Political rehabilitation. And that requires a narrative. The wayward son who almost made a terrible mistake but found clarity before destroying the family name. Your father's Senate campaign cannot survive you marrying the help. She's not. She's a nurse from nowhere with student loans and polyester ambitions. Do you know what the papers would do with that? What our donors would think? Victoria's voice dropped to something almost gentle. I've already spoken to the videographer. He'll capture everything. We'll control the story. Your moment of strength, your commitment to family values. By Monday, you'll be the responsible Whitmore who chose duty over infatuation. Evelyn's hands went cold. The wedding wasn't happening. It had never been happening. What about Evelyn? Preston asked quietly. What about her? Victoria's dismissal was absolute. She'll survive. Her kind always does. She'll go back to her hospital, her little life. And eventually she'll thank you for not dragging her into a world she was never equipped to handle. She loves me. She loves what you represent. There's a difference. Papers shuffling. The announcement is drafted. The guests are expecting a wedding. You'll give them closure instead. Clean. Public. Permanent. And if I refuse? Victoria's laugh was soft, deadly. Then your father cuts you off entirely. No trust fund. No campaign position. No future. You'll have nothing to offer that girl except love. And we both know that won't keep her warm when she realizes what she's truly lost. Evelyn backed away from the door, her vision blurring. Her chest felt crushed, airless. This wasn't cold feet. This wasn't doubt. This was execution. Planned, calculated, orchestrated by a woman who'd smiled at her over tea and called her dear while sharpening the knife. Preston had known. For how long she didn't know, but he'd known and said nothing. Let her keep planning, keep sacrificing, keep believing in a future that Victoria had already dismantled. Evelyn made it to the guest house before she broke. She had 3 weeks to decide. Confront them and lose anyway, or show up and let them destroy her publicly. Either way, she'd already lost. What she didn't know was that losing everything would become her liberation. The video had 2.3 million views by Tuesday. Groom calls OFF wedding at altar. She's worthless. The headline screamed across gossip sites, social media, even local news. Someone had edited it with zooms on Evelyn's face, the exact moment Preston said worthless, capturing her expression as it crumbled from hope to devastation. The comments were worse than the video itself. I mean, you can tell she doesn't belong there. Gold digger got what she deserved. Why would he marry a nurse when he could have anyone? Evelyn stopped reading after the first 100. Stopped checking her phone after the first 1,000 notifications. Stopped existing in any meaningful way by Wednesday. She'd fled the cathedral in her wedding gown, mascara streaming, while guests whispered and cameras followed. Jade had driven her home. Except home was the Whitmore guest house, and Evelyn couldn't breathe there anymore. She'd grabbed 2 suitcases of clothes and her nursing textbooks, leaving behind 3 months of her life and a forwarding address she'd never use. By Thursday, she'd quit Mercy General. Evelyn, you don't have to do this, her supervisor had said gently. Take leave. Take time. But don't throw away your career. It's already gone. Evelyn's voice was hollow. They recognize me in the hallways. Patients ask for selfies with that bride from the video. I can't do this. She'd walked out before anyone could argue. Her badge left on the desk like a surrender. The apartment she found was in a neighborhood she'd never visited, 40 minutes across the city, where no one knew the Whitmore name or cared about viral humiliation. It was small, dark, and affordable. A studio with water stains on the ceiling and neighbors who minded their own business. Perfect for disappearing. She survived on savings she'd tucked away for the honeymoon. Money that was supposed to buy happiness in Santorini but now bought ramen and silence instead. She stopped answering calls from Jade, from Maya, from her parents in Ohio who'd seen the video and didn't know what to say. Sweetheart, come home. Please. Her mother's voicemails went unanswered. Home felt like a different lifetime. Like someone else's memories. The days blurred together. Evelyn stopped showering regularly. Stopped changing out of Preston's old college sweatshirt she'd somehow packed. She watched the ceiling fan rotate for hours, counting blades, counting breaths, counting the ways she'd been stupid enough to believe. Sometimes she'd open her laptop to search for jobs, but her name was toxic now. Evelyn Garcia pulled up the video first. Always the video, before any nursing credentials or recommendations. HR departments Googled. Hiring managers watched. No one wanted the liability of the viral bride who'd been publicly deemed worthless. She was unhireable, unmarriageable, unforgivable in her own mind. By week 3, her savings account dipped below 4 figures. By week 5, she'd stopped checking it entirely. By week 8, she'd convinced herself this was her life now. Existing in a dim studio, surviving on shame, slowly disappearing until the internet forgot her and she could forget herself. She was wrong. On week 9, she walked into a bar called the Lotus Room, looking for nothing except a drink strong enough to silence her thoughts. And she met Nicholas Scanlon. The Lotus Room didn't ask questions. That's why Evelyn chose it. A bar in the industrial district where dim lighting and anonymity were features, not bugs. No one here cared about viral videos or society weddings. They came to drink, to forget, to exist without performance. Evelyn ordered whiskey. The kind that burned going down and made thinking harder. Rough night. The bartender was older, weathered, blessedly uninterested in conversation beyond professional courtesy. Rough life. Evelyn didn't look up. She'd made it through 2 drinks when she felt him, a presence that changed the air pressure in the room. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they quieted, drifted. People adjusted their posture without realizing it, the way prey animals sense predators. Evelyn glanced up. He stood near the bar's entrance, scanning the space with eyes that catalogued everything. Exits, occupants, threats. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a tailored black suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But it wasn't the suit that held attention. It was the tattoos. Dark ink crept up his neck from beneath his collar. Intricate designs she couldn't quite make out in the bar's low light. More tattoos disappeared under his cuffs, marking hands that looked equally capable of signing contracts or breaking bones. His gaze swept the room and landed on her. Evelyn looked away quickly, back to her whiskey. She didn't want attention, didn't want to be seen, especially not by someone who looked like walking danger. But she felt him approach anyway. Measured footsteps, unhurried confidence. This seat taken. His voice was low, textured with something that suggested he didn't actually need permission. It's a free country. Evelyn kept her eyes on her glass. He sat. Ordered scotch. Single malt, expensive. The kind Preston used to drink while explaining why her wine choices were pedestrian. They sat in silence for a moment. Evelyn expected him to try conversation, some variation of "What's a woman like you doing here?" or worse, recognition from the video. Instead he said, "You're running from something." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Excuse me." Not a question. An observation. He took a slow sip of scotch, his rings catching the bar light. "I've seen a lot of people trying to disappear. You've got the look." "And what look is that?" "Like you're here but not here. Drinking to forget but too disciplined to get drunk. Dressed down but expensive watch." His dark eyes flicked to her wrist. The Cartier Preston had given her for their first anniversary. The one thing she couldn't bring herself to pawn. "You didn't come from money. But you've been around it." Evelyn's chest tightened. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're not weak." He set down his glass, turning to face her fully. Weak people break. I just paused, trying to figure out if you want to go back or burn it all down. Something in his words cracked through her carefully constructed numbness. She looked at him properly for the first time, really looked. Sharp features, a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, eyes that held violence and intelligence in equal measure. "Who are you?" she whispered. His mouth curved slightly. "Nicholas Scanlon." The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it suggested it should. That in certain circles that name carried weight. "Consequence. Should I be afraid of you?" Evelyn asked. "Probably." His smile deepened. "But you're not. Which is why I'm still sitting here." He was right. He should be afraid. Instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Curious. Nicholas didn't ask about the video. That's what made Evelyn trust him. Or at least, trust him enough to accept when he slid a business card across the bar 3 drinks later. "I own a few businesses. Legitimate ones." His dark eyes held hers. "Property management, security consulting, import logistics. I need someone with attention to detail. Someone who understands how to read people." Evelyn stared at the card. Heavy stock, simple black lettering. "You don't know me. I know you're overqualified for whatever you're doing now. Which is nothing, I'm guessing." He wasn't wrong. "I also know you're living in that studio complex on Mercer Street, 3 blocks from here. And you've been coming to this bar every Tuesday and Thursday for 3 weeks. Her blood went cold. "You've been following me. I've been observing." Nicholas's tone didn't change. "There's a difference. And before you panic, I'm not interested in you that way. I'm interested in what you can do." "Which is what, exactly?" "Survive." He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "Most people in your position would have crumbled by now. You're still standing. That's rare. Think about it." He left cash on the bar. Too much, and walked out before she could respond. Evelyn called the number 2 days later, when her savings account hit double digits. Within a week, she was managing administrative operations for Scanlon Property Solutions, a luxury apartment portfolio that catered to clients who valued discretion. Her job was simple: coordinate maintenance, handle tenant concerns, ensure everything ran invisibly smooth. What surprised her was how good she was at it. "You've got instincts," Nicholas said during their first monthly review. His office overlooking the city from the 42nd floor. "Mrs. Chen in 7B. You caught the domestic situation before it escalated. Mr. Volkov's cash payments. You flagged those appropriately. You read situations." "I'm a nurse," Evelyn said simply. "Reading people is survival." "Was a nurse." Nicholas leaned back in his leather chair. "Now you're something else. Question is, what do you want to be?" Over the following months, Evelyn discovered the answer. Nicholas didn't coddle her or make allowances. He threw her into negotiations with contractors who tried to overcharge, meetings with tenants who thought intimidation would work, situations that required backbone and strategy. And she thrived. She learned that power in Nicholas's world operated differently than the Whitmore's carefully polished society. There were no etiquette rules about which fork to use, but there were unbreakable codes about loyalty, respect, and competence. People feared Nicholas, but they also trusted him. When he gave his word, it was iron. When someone crossed him, the consequences were swift and absolute. "You're good at this," Marcus, Nicholas's head of security, told her after she'd negotiated down a vendor trying to exploit them. "Too good for just property management." Meaning Nicholas sees potential. He doesn't invest in people unless he thinks they're worth it. Evelyn started attending higher-level meetings. Strategy sessions about expansion, risk assessment, how to handle competitors who played dirty. Nicholas never explained why he was including her. He simply expected her to keep up. And she did. She began dressing differently. Not to impress but to command. Tailored suits that fit like armor. Heels that added height and authority. Hair pulled back severe and sleek. The woman in the mirror looked nothing like the bride who'd fled a cathedral. This woman looked dangerous. "You've changed," Nicholas observed one evening, after a particularly brutal negotiation where Evelyn had refused to back down against a developer twice her size. "Is that a problem?" she asked. His smile was approving, almost proud. Not even a little. What Evelyn didn't realize yet was that Nicholas wasn't just teaching her business. He was teaching her power. The shift happened so gradually, Evelyn almost missed it. One night, working late in Nicholas's office on a complex acquisition deal, he'd ordered Thai food without asking her preference, just appeared with her usual order, the one she'd mentioned once 3 weeks ago. "You remembered," she'd said, surprised. "I pay attention." He'd set the container in front of her, already back to reviewing contracts. That's what respect looks like. It was such a small thing. But it cracked something open inside her, the realization that Nicholas noticed without needing praise for noticing. That he considered her preferences without making it transactional. Preston had brought flowers after every argument, expensive arrangements that required gratitude and forgiveness. Nicholas brought competence, consistency, and the assumption that she was capable of standing beside him. "You disagree with me," Nicholas said it one afternoon during a strategy meeting. His dark eyes fixed on her face. "I can see it. Say it." Evelyn hesitated. With Preston, disagreement had meant hours of explaining herself, justifying, softening her opinions until they disappeared entirely. "The West Side expansion is a mistake," she said carefully. "The market analysis doesn't account for the new zoning restrictions. We'd be overextended." Silence. Marcus and 2 other executives watched, waiting. Nicholas leaned back, studying her. "Explain." So she did. Laid out the data, the risks, the alternative approach she'd been considering. Half expecting pushback, defense, the subtle punishment of being frozen out. Instead, Nicholas smiled. "You're right. We'll pivot." He turned to Marcus. "Shelve Westside. Run Evelyn's numbers on the Northbrook properties instead." Just like that. No ego. No resentment. "You didn't have to do that," Evelyn said later when they were alone. "Do what?" "Listen to me. Change the plan." Nicholas looked at her like she'd said something absurd. "Why would I hire smart people and then ignore them? That's not leadership. That's insecurity." The contrast to Preston, to his need for control disguised as protection, was staggering. Their relationship evolved without declaration or ceremony. No dramatic confession or grand gesture. Just Nicholas's hand at the small of her back as they left difficult meetings. Her presence at dinners where business and strategy blurred together. The way he asked her opinion before making major decisions. Genuinely wanting her input. "You trust me," Evelyn said one night, the realization landing with unexpected weight. "With my business. My reputation. My vulnerabilities." Nicholas poured them both whiskey in his penthouse, the space that had somehow become theirs. "Why does that surprise you?" "Because I'm used to being tolerated, not trusted." "Then you were with the wrong people." He handed her the glass, his fingers brushing hers. "I don't tolerate Evelyn. I choose. There's a difference." She looked up at him. This dangerous man with neck tattoos and a reputation built on fear, and saw something Preston never possessed: certainty. Nicholas didn't need her to be smaller to feel bigger. Her strength enhanced his. It didn't threaten it. "I choose you too," she whispered. His kiss was unhurried, thorough, claiming without demanding. When he pulled back, his thumb traced her jaw with unexpected gentleness. "Then stop apologizing for taking up space," he said quietly. "Stop performing worthiness. You're not auditioning for a role in my life, Evelyn. You're already cast." For the first time since the cathedral, since the video, since she'd believed love required self-erasure, Evelyn felt something revolutionary. Enough. The first time Evelyn walked into a room and watched men straighten unconsciously, she understood what Nicholas had been teaching her. Power wasn't something you asked for. It was something you claimed. "Better," Nicholas had said that morning, watching her prepare for a high-stakes negotiation with a developer who'd been trying to undercut their acquisition. "But lose the apology in your posture." Evelyn had adjusted, shoulders back, chin level, the slight forward lean gone. She'd been shrinking herself so long it had become muscle memory. "Now you look like someone who expects to win," he'd said with approval. She'd won that negotiation. And the next one. And the one after that. 6 months into working with Nicholas, Evelyn barely recognized herself. The transformation wasn't just external, though that had changed too. Gone were the conservative cardigans and apologetic color palettes. Now she wore power suits in charcoal and midnight blue, tailored so precisely they could have been weapons. Her hair, once softly curled to look approachable, now fell in sleek waves or was pulled back in a style that said efficiency over decoration. But the real change was internal. "They're trying to intimidate you," Marcus had warned before her first solo meeting with the Colombo family. Old money real estate moguls with a reputation for chewing up newcomers. "They'll test you, push boundaries, see if you break." Evelyn hadn't broken. She'd walked into that boardroom like she owned it, met Sal Colombo's condescending smile with cool indifference, and proceeded to dismantle his lowball offer with surgical precision. By the end, he'd agreed to her terms and asked for her card. "You've got ice in your veins," he'd said almost admiringly. "Scanlon trained you well." "Scanlon recognized what was already there," she'd corrected. Because that was the truth Nicholas had shown her. He hadn't created her strength. He just stopped apologizing for it. She learned negotiation from watching Nicholas work. How to read micro-expressions, when to push and when to go silent, how to make people believe conceding was their idea. She learned strategy from Marcus, who taught her that every room had power dynamics and every dynamic could be shifted. She learned presence from observing how Nicholas moved through spaces, unhurried, certain, as if his belonging was never in question. "You walk different now," Jade said during their first lunch in months. "You look, I don't know, dangerous." "Good," Evelyn said simply. At charity galas, the ones Nicholas attended for networking, not society, Evelyn watched how the old guard reacted to her. The women who'd once looked through her now tracked her movements. The men who'd dismissed her now sought her attention. She'd become someone who mattered. "You're not intimidated anymore," Nicholas observed one evening after she'd handled a particularly aggressive investor who'd tried to bully his way into their development project. "No," Evelyn agreed. "I'm not." "What changed?" She considered the question. Months ago, she would have credited him, given him the power of her transformation. But she understood now that wasn't how this worked. "I stopped believing other people's opinions of me were more valid than my own," she said finally. "I stopped waiting for permission to take up space." Nicholas's smile was proud, possessive. There she is. The woman who'd begged at an altar was gone. In her place stood someone harder, sharper, unbreakable. Someone who'd learned that respect isn't given, it's commanded. Someone ready to face the people who'd destroyed her and show them exactly what they'd lost. The Hamilton Foundation Gala was where old money went to see and be seen. Evelyn walked in on Nicholas's arm, wearing a black gown that cost more than her previous month's rent used to be. Silk that moved like water, cut to suggest power rather than seduction. Her hair was swept back in a sleek chignon, diamond earrings catching the light. Not the borrowed jewelry she'd once worn to fit in, but pieces Nicholas had given her with casual certainty. "You'll need these." She felt eyes turn as they entered the ballroom. Recognition. Assessment. Recalculation. "Comfortable?" Nicholas asked quietly, his hand steady at the small of her back. "Completely," Evelyn said, and meant it. This wasn't the woman who'd tried to shrink herself to fit into these spaces. This was someone who took up room unapologetically, who met curious stares with cool indifference. They made it 10 minutes before she saw him. Preston stood near the champagne fountain, mid-conversation with a state senator. He looked the same, polished, preppy, that same boarding school confidence. But something in his posture had changed. Diminished. He'd lost weight, she noticed. Looked tired behind the smile. Their eyes met across the ballroom. She watched recognition hit him in stages. First confusion, then disbelief, then something that looked like grief. His champagne flute froze halfway to his lips. Evelyn turned away, utterly unmoved. "That him?" Nicholas asked, following her gaze. "That's him. Want me to handle it?" "No need." Evelyn accepted champagne from a passing waiter. "He's already handled." But Preston was moving toward them, weaving through clusters of guests with something like desperation. Evelyn felt Nicholas tense slightly beside her. Not afraid but alert. "Ready." "Evelyn." Preston's voice cracked on her name. Up close, he looked worse. Shadows under his eyes, a tremor in his hands. I didn't know you'd be here." "Why would you?" Her tone was polite, distant. The voice she used with business contacts she'd never see again. "You look." He struggled for words. "Different." "I am different." She let the silence hang, offering nothing. No explanation, no anger, no emotion at all. Preston's eyes shifted to Nicholas, taking in the tattoos, the expensive suit, the way he stood like violence wrapped in civility. "This is... you're with..." "Nicholas Scanlon," Nicholas said smoothly, extending his hand with deliberate courtesy. "And you're the ex-fiancé." "Preston, was it?" The handshake was brief. Preston's face paled slightly. Clearly he recognized the name now, understood the circles Nicholas moved in. "I need to talk to you," Preston said to Evelyn, desperation bleeding through. "Privately, please." "I made a mistake." "Preston." Victoria's voice cut through like ice. She appeared beside her son, immaculate in Chanel, but Evelyn saw the flash of recognition in her eyes. And beneath it something new, concern. Victoria Whitmore was afraid. "Mrs. Whitmore," Evelyn said with perfect politeness. "How lovely to see you." "Evelyn." Victoria's smile was strained. "This is... unexpected." "Is it?" Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I believe you once said I'd go back to my little life. I suppose you were half right, I did go back. Just not to the life you imagined." Victoria's gaze shifted to Nicholas, calculating. Evelyn could practically see her mind working, trying to assess threat level, influence, how to neutralize this situation. "We should catch up sometime," Preston said weakly. "Maybe lunch." "I don't think so." Evelyn's voice was gentle, final. "I'm quite busy these days." Nicholas's hand tightened slightly on her waist, support, pride, possession. We should find our table, darling. They walked away without looking back, leaving Preston and Victoria frozen in their wake. You enjoyed that, Nicholas observed quietly. Immensely, Evelyn admitted. Because revenge wasn't screaming or confrontation. It was walking away from people who'd once had the power to destroy you, and showing them they were irrelevant now. Preston found her on the terrace 20 minutes later. Evelyn had stepped outside for air, the gala's orchestrated perfection suffocating in its familiarity. The city sprawled below, glittering and indifferent. She heard his footsteps but didn't turn. I've been looking for you everywhere, Preston said, slightly breathless. Evelyn, please. Just 5 minutes. She took a slow sip of champagne, watching the skyline. You have 3. I was wrong. The words tumbled out, desperate, rehearsed. About everything. The wedding, what I said, letting my mother. His voice cracked. I've regretted it every day since. You have to believe me. I don't have to believe anything. Evelyn's tone was conversational, almost kind. That seemed to unsettle him more than anger would have. The campaign fell apart. My father lost the primary. Investors pulled out after the video went viral. Everyone saw what I did to you and they... He stopped, realizing how that sounded. I'm not saying I regret it because of the consequences. I regret it because I lost you. No, Preston. Evelyn finally turned to face him. You lost the idea of me. The version who made herself smaller so you could feel bigger. That woman never actually existed. That's not true. We were happy. You were comfortable. I was performing. She set down her champagne glass with careful precision. There's a difference. Preston stepped closer, desperation radiating off him. I know I hurt you. I know I can't undo what I did. But we could start over. Changed. I've been in therapy. I told my mother. I don't care what you told your mother. Evelyn's voice remained steady, almost gentle. I don't care about your therapy or your regrets or your father's failed campaign. I don't care about you at all anymore, Preston. That's what you don't understand. You're not my villain. You're just irrelevant. The word landed like a physical blow. Preston's face crumpled. Please. Evelyn, please. Mr. Whitmore. Nicholas's voice cut through the night as he stepped onto the terrace. Not threatening, just present. Final. I think the lady's made herself clear. Preston looked between them. This woman he'd destroyed and the dangerous man who'd helped rebuild her. And something in him finally broke. You think you've won. He's a criminal, Evelyn. Everyone knows what Scanlon really is. You've traded one mistake for another. The difference, Evelyn interrupted quietly, is that Nicholas has never once made me feel worthless. Has never asked me to be less so he could be more. Has never used love as a weapon. She picked up her champagne, done with this conversation. You taught me what I won't accept. He taught me what I deserve. I should probably thank you for that. She walked past Preston without another glance, Nicholas falling into step beside her. Behind them, Victoria emerged from the shadows where she'd clearly been listening. This isn't over, she called after them, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. Evelyn paused, looking back over her shoulder. Yes, Mrs. Whitmore. It is. Inside, the gala continued. Crystal and champagne and carefully orchestrated wealth. But Evelyn felt lighter than she had in years. Not because she'd confronted them. Not because she'd gotten revenge or the last word. But because she'd finally, completely stopped caring. Feel better? Nicholas asked as they descended the marble stairs toward the valet. I feel free, Evelyn said. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing. Then let's go home. Not the Whitmore guest house where she'd been tolerated. Not the dim studio where she'd hidden. But the penthouse they shared. The life they'd built together on respect and partnership, and the radical notion that love shouldn't require sacrifice. Preston had called her worthless. But standing here now, powerful, chosen, entirely herself, Evelyn understood the truth. She'd never needed his validation to have value. She'd always been enough. She just needed to stop asking permission to believe it. Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more.